always great having like chimes, right, like ring you in. Guten Tag, and that's about the German I know, so sorry. So the rest is going to be in English. I'm going to talk about what I like to call sustainable platform engineering. And obviously, a lot of you have been in this room entire day hearing about various aspects of platform engineering. The main thing I want you to take out of this is that whatever you do, you need to do over a long period of time. Not just there's no easy wins here, unfortunately. And hopefully, at the end of this session, you will have a better experience or a better idea of what it takes to do something long term. Before we start, I just want a quick raise of hands. Who here works at a manager level? All right, cool. And is I guess the rest is engineering, raise of hands? Okay, yeah. So for you that work in management, take this as a idea of what to do on an organization level. For you that work in engineering, this is your ammunition to go to management and tell them, to shape up. Anyway, my name is Robert. I work at Stereo, and I'm based out of Oslo, Norway. I do a lot of things, and I've been doing that for many years, but I've been very active in the CNCF, where I helped found the Platforms Working Group, which a lot of these things come out of. And I do a bunch of stuff. So if anyone wants to nerd about something not IT, I put in a little bit of description there. I like music and a lot of nerdy stuff. So afterwards, come talk to me about platform engineering or weird progressive music. Same for me. Anyway, my experience with platforms, I've been doing platform engineering for a long time. I primarily worked as a consultant, so I've been to many organizations, and I've seen platforms that have done amazing, and I've seen platforms that have been total. I was about to swear. I'm from the north of Norway, so I swear a lot. But they didn't do good, right? And I've helped develop and run just about any type of platform that there is. And all of this is things that I've taken into the work that I've done with the CNCF platform community. And I like to say that if you saw the panel discussion earlier, I said I've been doing this since before platform engineering. When I started working with platforms, before there was that idea, I couldn't understand why there was this gap between IT and ops, and why there's a us versus them type mentality. That never resonated with me, because obviously if you're offering something, the people that you offer that to should probably like it, and you can't just like force stuff through. So I don't know if anyone of you have been working like with regular IT operations and regular development cycles, but I've been at many places where developers can't tell infrastructure people what they need because they don't know infrastructure, right? Those kind of things. Especially the last part about networking. That stems true. I've been arguing with networking people for ages, and turns out even though they're absolutely flawless and can't do anything wrong, there's usually something wrong in the firewall somewhere. So the idea behind platform engineering is to not do the old-fashioned way of doing stuff and try to do it in a more modern approach. So it's still kind of IT operations, but looked at a little bit different. And what we mean by platform engineering is that we want to build engineering organization that actually works, and not the typical IT ops that we used to have. And it's all DevOps, even though some people say it's not. DevOps is still a thing. It's still relevant. It's still the thing that we do. I often rant about the fact that there's things called DevOps engineers and stuff like that. That makes no sense, because DevOps is something that we all do, no matter where we work at. It's about the collaboration. And platform engineering is taking DevOps and putting it into a system. I mentioned that I helped found the platformers working group, and when we started that, the first thing that we started arguing about is what is a platform. So that became kind of the first thing that we did, which is create a platformers white paper. And you don't necessarily need to read everything here, but I highly suggest anyone that haven't read the white paper to go in and read it. It's getting revisited now because stuff has happened since then. But it's a fairly good representation of what a platform is. And again, a platform is an abstraction level. And a platform can be just about anything. And I have a colleague that says that like platform doesn't make sense until you put something in front of it, because what are you building? So a platform can be an infrastructure platform. It could be a developer or application platform. It could be a data platform. It could be an integration platform. But all in all, you approach it in the same way. You want to build something that people want to use, and you want to build something that actually helps accelerate development, not just sending ticket back and forth and having people arguing about semantics. In the platform's white paper, we broke it down into two things. Specifically, what a platform is platform interfaces. How do you work towards the platform? And the set of capabilities, and that is a very important thing. We don't want to necessarily always talk about the actual technical implementation part. We want to raise it a little bit up. So instead of saying a specific, like MongoDB or something like that, we want to say NoSQL or structural database. Because for the people using the platform, they might say they want something very specific, but what they actually need is a set of capabilities. And on top of the platform, depending on where the platform is, you might both have production and product and application teams that are using the platform. And underneath, you would have infrastructure providers or other platforms. So it's platforms all the way down or something. And why do we build platforms? Well, among other things, reduce cognitive load, making sure that we can more easily develop and do stuff without having to always keep in mind every single aspect of what's needed. Developer productivity is a very big one. That gets a lot of people talk a lot about that. But what I tend to also bring forth is reliability and resilience. You want something that scales, both up and down, and you want something that is secure. But security shouldn't stop people from developing features. And infrastructure and service efficiency, so that is like the main reason why you use something like Kubernetes, right? Because Kubernetes do what's called bin packing, like how many things can you put into certain bins and how do they fit. This is the same thing. We want to not have that infrastructure sprawl where all of a sudden you're spending thousands of dollars extra just running basic stuff. And being that efficient with infrastructure and services that you use is really hard unless you have that layer of platform. And so now we all know what platforms is. Good. What are the key success factors? In my experience, it kind of boils down to these four things. So autonomy, that is a word that gets thrown out a lot. Not necessarily everyone understands what autonomy is. I'm going to get back to that. But one of the other success factors is leadership, having actual leadership support and having leadership actually understand what we're trying to do. And that becomes a topic very often for me because I work both towards like management level and engineers, and I try to make them speak the same language. And the gap between those two are often very far apart. Starting small, you don't need a big game plan to do platforms. You need to start doing it, right? And the way that you do that is start small. Like, how do you eat an elephant? Probably shouldn't, but that's a thing. And then you have feedback loop. You have end users. You have users of your platform. You need to know what they think about your platform. I always, tell people, like, think of you having a phone service and you can't call certain people. And if you call into to their help desk and they go like, well, it is what it is, that doesn't really help. Like, you want your service to work and you want to get that feedback in, and you need to change based on that feedback. I often try to put other people's words on screen because someone said it better. I don't know if you heard of this person, but I just love that guy in turtleneck. This is a quote that gets thrown out a lot. I've heard it from people that they have quoted this, and then they have tried to control the people that they hired. And it's kind of weird that this came out of Steve Jobs, because I heard some weird stories about him, but the essence of it is true. Like, if you get someone in to do a job, you want them to be able to do that job. And this comes back to autonomy. One of the key success factors is team autonomy, and you need to give the team the trust that they deserve. They're there, they want to do a good job, they want to build something great, and most of all, they want to do that without having to go through way too much red tape and bureaucracy and other things. I got this from the most reliable source, Wikipedia. But one of the things that I kind of took into, the fact that autonomy is known to generally increase job satisfaction. I don't know about you, but I like to work. And I like to be happy about work, and I like to actually do stuff that I like. Weirdly enough, if you can't do things that you like, you don't really do a good job. It makes sense when you think about it, but for some reason, some people keep on insisting that, we are the leadership team, and we take decisions, and then you just do. That's how you get subpar workers, because either they hate that and then leave, or they accept that and stay, and they don't do a good job. So autonomy, very important. And I like to think of it as you need to be able to give trust into teams and give them a mandate and responsibility and the structure around what they're supposed to do. Having clear expectations, having clear directions, let them know what they're supposed to solve, not how to solve it, and those teams will generally do better work. This comes back to the whole sustainable part. If you have teams that are truly autonomous and can do and solve the problems that you present to them, they will stick around and continue to work on your platform. Another quote that I use regularly, and everyone's heard about it, but not necessarily always take it into account, is Conway's Law. How many here has heard about Conway's Law? All right, good. Should be more. But Melvin Conway was a really smart dude. In 1967, he said this in a paper, and this was in 67, and turns out he was right. And again, how you structure your organization and then how they communicate, that is what you're going to get out, right? Which is why traditional IT ops with siloed networking, database, et cetera, became the, that's how they work, right? Someone takes a decision on specific system that is implemented, and yeah. So when it comes to platform engineering, you want to build an organization that makes sense. But one of the things that I always like to point out that whatever you do now is not necessarily what should be forever. Even though restructuring is like a bad word, Sometimes you structure your teams in a certain way to build something, and when you have built that, you could restructure depending on what your needs are, which makes it easy for them to develop things further. And I've had this thing which is kind of unstructured and so on and so forth, but just to show, this was for a client, or this is a version of something that was sent to a client, where you have what is the responsibilities for a platform team, what is the responsibility for a cloud infrastructure team, and what is the development team or product team's responsibilities. And there's more that is on the development side of this that they need to be responsible for than you would think. If you develop a product, you need to be in control of this CI/CD. That doesn't mean that you have to, write everything from scratch. There are things that we can do as a platform team to make it easier. Reusable workflows if you're using GitHub, or templating and so on and so forth. Make sure that everyone knows how stuff works. The point is that you want to give them all the tools that they need to do their job, and they need to take responsibility for what they produce and develop. And this is at a big company, or was at a big company. These boxes don't work for everyone. That is also an important thing to think about. You don't need to structure. I'm not saying this is like the best approach ever. It all depends on what type of people you have in your organization and how you're structured. At the same company, I struggled with the fact that they wanted everything to be written down in advance. So do not fall into the trap of death by design. I spent a week talking to some people that wanted me to write down the design document for GitHub. And which I replied, well, GitHub designed it, so I don't know, yeah. And the main point here is, you don't need to take every decision now. At some point, you just need to start. There are some things that are necessarily that are good to do before you start implementing something, but a service like GitHub, I think most of us have used and understand how it works. There are certain things that you should probably just get in there right away, but you don't need to write it down. You don't need to have the entire plan ready ahead of time. What you need is to get started with something. And that is one of the main key takeaways from this. Again, I don't have too much time, so I'm not going to spend too much on it. But inner source. At 4, Leanne is going to talk about inner source specifically. Yeah? Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's a very good idea. I'm not mentioning names, but again, I was at a client where they didn't want the developers to see the infrastructure as code that the platform team wrote. So they wanted developers to be in a different organization just to not have them be involved with that. And I tried to ask, like why is that? And well, the answer was, well, they don't have anything to do with that. That's a very bad idea, in my opinion. The main thing about inner source is that everyone should be able to see what's going on so that you get an idea of what's happening behind the curtains. Having something thrown into a black hole and hope that it sticks is not really great. And even if I'm at the client doing a very specific thing, I always want to be, it's good for me to be able to go through how the other teams around me, how they set up stuff, so I can know what to expect. But also just the idea of if I struggle with something, I should be able to do a pull request or something. That takes the load off every team. If people that find faults not only complains about it, but also try to fix it, that just makes things better for everyone. Again, I'm not going to go too much into it since Leanne is going to do a talk about that. But one thing that I always talk about, and I think it's worth talking about, is to start small. I don't know about you, how you work, but there's some people that really like the act of writing down just about everything. I like doing stuff. And when we talk about starting small, what it comes down to for me is we want to have something that's tangible. We want something up and running that does the bare minimum of things. And we reference this in the white paper, but it comes from Team Topologies, the idea of a thinnest viable platform. No matter what the end goal is, you should have like a Northern Star or guiding principle that you want to get to something ahead. That you don't have to solve all those things now. What you need is to figure out what you need at the moment, build that, and then you can build the rest of the features. And if you go back to the white paper model, if you start looking at all these boxes, there might be a lot of things here you don't really need. Some of these things you only need a certain portion of. You just need to figure out what you actually need to build to get something out of the platform. I don't know why I do with that. So, and the idea is that you want continuous improvement. You want your customers to give you feedback, and you can't really get feedback if you have nothing, right? Sending out stuff to people, say, we're thinking about building something like this, like that's not going to really give you that much value. You want something that people can say, try out and give you feedback specifically on the things that you implemented, where you need to go next, so on and so forth, so you can be data-driven. You want to know what what the next steps are, and not just like look into a crystal ball and try to figure out everything. And again, in the source. So if you're building something, they should be able to see the actual code and what it's doing and give you specific feedback on that. On the panel discussion, we talked about metrics. There are a bunch. One of the more famous ones is the DORA one, and I like this particular one because it kind of gives an idea of all the things that are required for your platforms to be successful. But that doesn't necessarily paint the entire picture. So, for instance, you have the monk metrics, which I kind of like, where it starts talking about stuff like market share, like how many of your developers are using your platform. How long does it take to get your platform team or product teams into the platform? Net promoter score. I never had a good experience with that, but apparently that's a thing. I don't know. And then you have what they call key customer metrics, which could be from one of these other frameworks. But when we did the platforms white paper, the next thing that we did was the platform engineering maturity model. And I like to refer to this instead because it's more nuanced. It has more in it. This is a table from that where we have where we took platform engineering and broke it into various aspects. And even though it's a maturity model, what we always keep on saying is you don't need to win. You don't need to go and we need to get to level 4 on everything. You need to figure out where you should be on this and start working towards that. And I can do an entire talk about this one, but it's one of those things that can give you a good idea of what you need to do at your company to get platform engineering up and running. Slowly running out of time. One way of getting customer feedback is user interviews. That has been a weird experience for me because it requires you not to talk, or preferably you shouldn't talk, which is unusual for me. Usually I talk all the time. But you need to go into a room and talk to a developer and actually hear their honest feedback. So for instance, doing things like anonymizing whatever they say is important. Get a developer into the room, not someone that represents the developer. Tell them questions that don't necessarily have a specific answer, and the best part, let them rant about everything that's wrong. That's where you get the most out of this. When they start, when we started doing this at the last customer I was at, we got into a room and started talking to them, and they say, yeah, everything's great. And I guess it was a case of Stockholm syndrome or something, because it took a little bit of a while, and they got a little bit, they let their guards down, and then they're just starting like telling us about everything that's been a crap experience for the last 3 years. And there was a lot, right? So you need to get them into a room and try to get them comfortable enough to share this. And again, if you anonymize this and things like that, no manager is gonna know that it came from a certain person. And then you need to synthesize the data and stuff like that, so you can present that to someone in a way that makes sense. So, as we're going into the last 3 minutes, summary. Agile. Try to be agile. Focus on meaningful tasks, not redundant exercises. If someone tells you to estimate a time to do something, then tell them to something. Try to set goals, but try not to plan everything. Like, stuff happens, right? And you might have an idea of what something takes now, then you start doing it, and then you realize, oh, I was wrong. That is normal. That happens to everyone. Autonomy. You need to allow teams. Allowing teams to decide is not giving up control. You just enable them to do actual work. CAB boards should not exist. That is, if you have a set of architects that make decisions on behalf of other teams without actually being in the teams, that's not really great. That just makes things take time, stops everything up, and turns out they don't actually know what they're talking about. And then efficient development and operations, get shit done. The thing is that no matter what you do, with some exceptions, most of things are reversible and you can change, right? So it's better to have something and then experience, how that is, and then make a informed decision than just thinking this is the right way of doing things. So get something in there, start small. And with that, there's a QR code to rate this thing. These are my credentials, I guess. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm probably on all social medias, but I don't use them. And if there is anything you want to talk about, then I'm going to be here. I also say all week, but I'm not. I'm going to be here tomorrow as well. So that's it. Thank you.